Hi, welcome to Moon Meditation and more. We're doing the Flower Ornament Sutra, also called the Flower Ornament Scripture. It's a translation of the Avatamsaka Sutra by Thomas Cleary. The Flower Ornament Scripture, called Avatamsaka in Sanskrit and Huayan in Chinese, is one of the major texts of Buddhism. It's also referred to as the major scripture of inconceivable liberation. It is perhaps the richest and most grandiose of all Buddhist scriptures, held in high esteem by all schools of Buddhism that are concerned with the universal liberation. Its incredible wealth of sensual imagery staggers the imagination and exercises an almost mesmeric effect on the mind as it conveys a wide range of teachings through its complex structure, its colorful symbolism, and its mnemonic concentration formula. It is not known when or by whom this scripture was composed. It is thought to have issued from different hands in the Indian cultural sphere during the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, but it is written so as to embrace a broad spectrum of materials and resists rigid systemization. While standard figures and images from Indian mythology are certainly in evidence here, as in other Buddhist scriptures, it might be more appropriate to speak of its provenance in terms of Buddhist culture, rather than Indian culture per se. The Flower Ornament Scripture presents a compendium of Buddhist teachings. It could variously be said, with a measure of truth in each case, that these teachings are set forth in a system, in a plurality of systems, and without a system. The integrity of Buddhism as a whole, the specificity of application of its particular elements, and the interpenetration of those elements are fundamental points of orientation of the unfolding of the scripture. Historicity, as such, is certainly of little account in the Flower Ornament Scripture. This is generally true of the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures, although they usually present their teachings as having been revealed or occasioned by the meditations of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. In the case of the Flower Ornament Scripture, most of the discourse is done by transhistorical symbolic beings who represent aspects of universal enlightenment. The Buddha shifts from an individual to a cosmic principle and manifestations of that cosmic principle. The Buddha, in one line, might be the Buddhas in the next, representing enlightenment itself, the scope of enlightenment, or those who have realized enlightenment. Certainly one of the most colorful and dramatic rehearsals of Buddhist teachings. The Flower Ornament Scripture became one of the pillars of East Asian Buddhism. It was a source of some of the very first Buddhist literature to be introduced to China, where there eventually developed a major school of philosophy based on its teachings. This school spread to other parts of Asia, interacted with other major Buddhist schools, and continues to the present. The appreciation of the Flower Ornament Scripture was not, however, by any means confined to the special Flower Ornament School, and its influence is particularly noticeable in the literature of the powerful Chan Zen schools. The work of translating from the Flower Ornament Scripture into Chinese apparently began in the 2nd century AD and continued for the better part of 1,000 years. And during this time, more than 30 translations and retranslations of various books and selections from the scripture were produced. Numerous related scriptures were also translated, and many of these texts still exist in Chinese. Comprehensive renditions of the scripture were finally made in the early 5th and late 7th centuries. The original texts for both of these monumental translations were brought to China from Khotan in Central Asia, which was located on the Silk Route, and was a major center for the early spread of Buddhism into China. Khotan, where an Indo-Iranian language was spoken, is now a part of Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region in China near Kashmir, another traditional center of Buddhist activity. The first comprehensive translation of the Flower Ornament Scripture was done under the direction of an Indian monk named Buddhabhadra. The second, under the direction of Khotanese monk named Shikshananda. The later version, from which the present English translation is made, was based on a more complete text imported from Khotan at the request of the Empress of China. It is somewhat more than 10% longer than Buddhabhadra's translation. The flower ornament scripture in Shikshananda's version contains 39 books. By way of introduction to this long and complex text, we will focus on a comparison of the flower ornament scripture with other major scriptures, as well as a brief glance at the main thrust of each book. A comparison with other major Buddhist scriptures. Due to the great variety in Buddhist scriptures, analysis of their interrelation was an integral part of Buddhist studies in East Asia, where scriptures were introduced in great quantities irrespective of their time or place of origin. In order to convey some idea of the Buddhism of the flower ornament scripture in respect to other major scriptures, as well as to summarize some of the principal features of the flower ornament, we will begin this introduction with a comparison of the flower ornament with other important scriptures. This discussion will be based on the discourse of the flower ornament, a famous commentary by an 8th century Chinese lay Buddhist, Li Tongxuan. What follows is a free rendering of these comparisons of the flower ornament scripture to the scriptures of the lesser vehicle, the Pali Canon. The Brahmajala scripture, the Prana Paramita scriptures, the Sandinir Mokana scripture, the Lankavarta scripture, the Vimalakar Tinirdesa scripture, the Sadarama Pundarika scripture, and the Mahaparinirvana scripture. The scriptures containing the precepts of the lesser vehicle are based on conceptual existence. The Buddha first told people what to do and what not to do. In these teachings, relinquishment is considered good, and non-relinquishment is considered not good. Doctrine set up this way is not yet to be considered indicative of true existence. This teaching based on existence is temporary, dealing with the delusions of ordinary feelings and the arbitrary invention of ills. This teaching is designed to stop these and enable people to live in truly human or celestial states. That is why the preface of the precept says that if one wants to live in heavenly or human conditions, one should always keep the precepts. People's fabricated doings are unreal and not true attainment. Therefore, their life in human and celestial states is impermanent, not truly real. They have not yet attained the body of reality and the body of knowledge. This teaching is not based on true existence. It is temporarily based on conceptual existence. And this is the model of the lesser vehicle. As for keeping precepts in the flower ornament scripture, it is not this way, as it says in the scripture. Is the body religious practice? Are walking, standing, sitting, or reclining religious practice, and so on, examining closely in search of the religious practice. Ultimately, finding it cannot be apprehended, this ungraspability is why it is called pure religious practice. And as the scripture says, those engaged in such practice are said to uphold the discipline of the Buddha nature and attain the Buddha's reality body. Therefore, they attain enlightenment at the first inspiration because they keep the discipline of the Buddha nature. They are equal to the essence of Buddha, equal in terms of nomenon and phenomenon, merging with the cosmos of reality. And when they keep discipline this way, they do not see themselves keeping precepts. They do not see others breaking precepts. Their action is neither that of ordinary people nor that of saints. They do not see themselves arousing the determination for enlightenment. They do not see the Buddhas attaining enlightenment. If there is anything at all that can be grasped or apprehended, whether good or bad, this is not called enlightenment, not called pure practice. One should see in this way, such discipline based on the essence is itself the body of reality. The body of reality is the knowledge of Buddhas. The knowledge of Buddhas is true enlightenment, and therefore this discipline of the flower ornament scripture is not the same as the teaching of the lesser vehicle, which has choosing and rejection. Next, our precepts for enlightened beings in the Brahmajala scripture are based on presentation of both conceptual existence and real existence. For people who have big hearts and like to practice kindness and compassion.